welcome to yet another edition of the Acid Trash Jamboree, where we discuss offbeat and lesser-known films and music. For this video and the next one, instead of doing something strictly thematic, I thought I'd pull together a handful of things that got played lately and share my thoughts on those. So without further ado, here's what's been keeping me entertained these past few weeks. The late Wolfgang Dauner was an important figure in the European free jazz and fusion scenes, and etc. Was one of many groups that he formed over the years. This here is their second and final studio album entitled Knirsch, which is German for crunch, hence the massive set of gnashers on the cover. Knirsch offers up something different track to track, opening with the Really Great Escape, which is an upbeat, jammed out, riffy rock song with some funky touches and a decent vocal performance, presumably from the tune's composer, Larry Coryell. Next up, Sun is a loose fusion piece which seesaws between two open-ended chords and gradually gets more and more intense and more noodly as it progresses, with Coryell providing some nicely jagged, kind of John McLaughlin-esque guitar runs. Jan, the first of three epics here, opens with a section of ring-modulated sonic exploration on a lone synth, which continues to float around in the background as the group enter with some mellow, free-flowing, almost pastoral fusion. After this, a tabla drum lays down a solid rhythm of which the players fire off little improvisational gestures, small and quite hesitant at first, and then building up to more extended and confident bursts of sound, with Dauner rumbling away on piano and Richard Ketterer really freaking out on vocals. The piece concludes with a section of mostly quiet, mysterious sounding improv, which then drifts into a somewhat half-hearted climax. Track 4, Tuning Spread, opens with a brief flurry of experimental tape tomfoolery before establishing itself as a kind of funky fusion groover, which is heavy on the soloing from Coryell, Dauner, and the dual drummers Fred Braceful and John Hiseman. The closer, Yin, is perhaps the highlight here, opening on a mellow fusion groove, but eventually getting ruder and funkier sounding, introducing gritty keyboard and guitar textures, until the band really start cooking up an eclectic electric stew, not a million miles away from the classic stuff that Miles Davis was cranking out a few years prior to this. I haven't heard it in quite a while, but I think I can safely say that Etc's self-titled debut album is a bit more exciting and out there than this one is overall, though admittedly that one was made by a markedly different lineup. Whilst Knirsch is a nice enough listen, feels a bit tame and watered down in places, as if the group were holding something back or afraid to get too freaky. Still, taken on its own merits, as a pleasant fusion record with some occasional abrasive avant-garde edges, then it's certainly worth a few listens. Now, I bought Canadian singer-songwriter John Palmer's Shorelines a few years back, whilst on a mostly fruitless quest for decent loner or downer folk obscurities from the 70s. A lot of the time with stuff like this, at least in my experience, you end up with a bunch of tedious sub-James Taylor dreck instead of something cool. So yeah, you may as well have just saved your pennies and stuck with Dino Valenti or Neil Young or whatever. Thankfully then, this album has a bit more going for it, not least a consistently gloomy atmosphere, helped along by its mostly very slow tempo and Palmer's dreary, depressed-sounding croon. These last two factors will no doubt be a turn-off for most, but as I said, at the time I was explicitly searching for the most downcast stuff that I could find, so it doesn't bother me so much. It also helps that the songwriting is pretty good. Whilst he's no musical genius, thankfully every time a stock chord progression rears its boring head, Palmer will save the day by throwing in an interesting little twist or a key change. While some of the tracks, like Mandala for instance, are based around altered guitar tunings, giving them a more esoteric, psychedelic flavour. Elsewhere, stuff like Free Me features full band accompaniment, including some pleasingly noisy fuzz bass. Now, I've seen Shorelines described as being like a cross between the aforementioned Neil Young and also Tim Buckley, which is sort of true. Just don't expect any epic guitar solos or virtuoso vocal acrobatics from the altogether more modest and low-key John Palmer, and I think you'll be fine with this one. Now, here's an obscurity for you. GA2 by Golden Axes 2. Released in 1996 by the Audible Hiss label, who also put out stuff by the Tower Recordings and Bill Orcutt, amongst others. This mainly consists of quick little bursts of vaguely hypnotic, improvised sounding, dual electric guitar strumming, a lot of which is very fuzzy and dissonant and coated in layers of satisfyingly low fidelity tape crud. On some of the pieces, we hear female voices chatting or singing along very quietly, whilst track 8 features drum accompaniment from someone called M. James Crewson, who's represented inside the digipack by an ultra out-of-focus Jandex-style photograph of a dark room with the curtains closed. Yeah, otherwise it's a complete mystery as to who was behind this project, as no other credits are given and nothing has come to light since it came out. Speaking of Jandek, sound-wise, GA2 reminds me slightly of his mid-80s electric period, or maybe the very earliest Shorelines material, whilst the tune with the drummer takes things in a more intense, kind of Sonic Youth-style direction. So, not an album to blow your socks off or change your life by any means, but still an intriguing and mysterious little oddity from the 90s US netherworld all the same. Lastly for now, a quick word about Fabio Frizzi's score to Lucio Fulci's surrealist horror masterpiece The Beyond. And I haven't seen the film in a good few years, but thankfully the music is still highly listenable on its own. It's tense, chromatic piano figures, liquid bass lines, pensive guitar arpeggios, and tight drum grooves bring to mind the best work of fellow Italian score legends Goblin, though elsewhere Frizzi brings in gorgeous pastoral flute themes, and on the masterful Voci del Nulla we hear layers of spine-tingling polyphonic choral singing, which add swathes of climactic gothic drama to what is already a rich and enchanting suite of music. I mean, yeah, believe it or not, there was actually a short window of time where gore-soaked Euro horror films and disco and funk-infused prog music made most excellent bedfellows. Who knew? So yeah, these are but 4 humble selections from one particular groaning shelf that houses my CD collection. Please check out the next episode for another helping of obscure odds and ends, and feel free to subscribe if this kind of music is your thing, as there's plenty more to come in the not too distant future. As ever, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again on the next episode of the Acid Trash Jamboree.